I want to bring in Jack Rowlett, political commentator with Young Voices UK, and get his reaction to the events of the past 24 hours or so. Good morning, Jack. Thank you for staying up for us.
Good morning.
First of all, reflections on what we've seen over the past day or so.
Oh, well, I think above all, it really feels like the vibes are off, in a sense. Like, we've witnessed this incredible transformative election. The Labour Party has gone from, landslide defeat in 2019 to landslide victory yesterday. But it kind of feels like, not by us political nerds, I should add, but by the country at large, it's sort of been greeted with this big collective shrug. And I think it's a real reflection of how negative the campaign has been. I don't feel like the messaging has been very positive from either the Tories or Labour. It's both been about fear of the other one. And I wonder if that's a big underlying factor in why, we've seen Labour win such a big majority, but on the lowest percentage of the votes that any party has ever won a majority on, and why the two-party vote has fallen so much. Because actually, this election it's an anti-politics election. As much as we've seen Reform not do as well in terms of number of seats as perhaps some of the MRP polls projected. Actually, lots of people are voting for Reform, lots of people are voting for independent candidates, turning to third parties. And I think it's a real, it could not be more different from, what we see when we look back and look at 1997 or 2001.
The rise of the independents is fascinating, and I wonder if there's a parallel. I wonder if this is a bit of a global phenomenon, because I appreciate not everyone follows Irish politics that closely, but because I'm weird and because I'm a geek, I do follow Irish politics quite closely. And independents are having a whale of a time over in Ireland. They are racking up seat after seat after seat. They'll probably make big gains in the Irish elections, whenever that is, either this autumn or it's got to be held at some point by, I think, March or so next year. And in local elections, they're doing phenomenally well. In the recent European elections, they did phenomenally well. And these are independent candidates. And we started to see it last night with some of these, particularly some of these pro-Gaza candidates who unseated Labour MPs. We're almost starting to see independents come through. And I wonder if that might be a growing phenomenon.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think, as you say, it is a growing phenomenon sort of across similar democracies to us, because I know in Australia at the last election there, they had a big breakthrough for independent candidates too. I think what it would be really interesting to see is, as you say, a lot of these independent candidates, they've kind of come through on single issue platforms. And it will be interesting to see whether they can actually hold their support when they go into Parliament and they actually have to come up with what they think about, economic policy and the NHS and schools, etc., rather than just Gaza. But I think it's quite a worrying trend that we're seeing such sectarian voting patterns, and that really come through at this election. And I think that's something that needs to be tackled head on in this Parliament, because lots of these independent candidates have really extreme views, really unpleasant opinions and ideas about the role of women in society or LGBT people, for example. And I think for too long we've sort of been pussyfooting around that. And you can have whatever view you like on the situation in Gaza, and you can think what's happening is awful. But actually, lots of the stuff that's going along with these independent candidates is really, really deeply unpleasant. And I don't think we can stay silent on that anymore.
What would you like to see from Labour in the first few weeks in office? I know that housing is a massive issue for you, Jack. Planning reform, do you want to see them push ahead with that as a matter of urgency?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has to be the top priority. It's the only way we're going to get the economy growing again in real terms. And I think that's the only way Labour stays in power in 2029. They've not got an enormous amount of enthusiasm from the electorate, relatively low percentage of the vote. But economic growth is that great uniter. It brings people from all different parts of the electorate together. Governments that are leading roaring economies don't lose. And the best way to do that is to reform planning, because it's just holding back our economy. We're 5 million short of the number of houses we need. Our rail infrastructure is creaking. Our road infrastructure is creaking. Energy is so expensive here because we've not built enough power stations, and we've got to manage the transition to net zero as well. So I think that above all has to be the priority. But I think also, that's quite a big picture thing, as much as we need to do it soon. I think we can also look at, there are things that Labour can do that are smaller, that will have an immediate, tangible, positive impact, like, for example, settling with the junior doctors. That will have an immediate impact on people's experience of the NHS. So I think, we do need planning reform. I think that has to be the biggest thing. And I think we will see Angela Rayner setting out Labour's proposal for that in this coming week. But also there are more immediate things that the party can be doing too that can bring about change right away.
Jack, stay there. I'm just going to read out a few of our messages already. This is from Linda in East London, who says, I'm a complete election and politics nerd, so I've loved the last 24 hours. I do wonder, however, says Linda, if we will see some legal challenges, because some of the counts were very tight, and we have had an issue with postal votes. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Interesting point you raised there, Linda. Morning to Warren, who says, loving the coverage. James, I voted Tory all my life, but this year I voted Lib Dem, mainly because I wanted to put the boot into the Conservatives in Sevenoaks. I've been disillusioned for a while as a Tory Remainer, and I think Brexit has been, as predicted, a disaster. The Conservatives have lost the plot over the past 5 years, but I'll support them again if they get their act together. Brilliant coverage on Times Radio. I've had it turned on constantly for the last 24 hours. Well, thank you very much, Warren. And we're not going anywhere because, of course, our 100 hours of live rolling election coverage continues. Jack, you said something really interesting there a moment ago. You said if Labour settle with the junior doctors when it comes to this strike, what would settling look like? Because I think their pay demand is still 35%. Wes Streeting, realistically, is not going to give them 35%, is he?
No, I don't think you will. But I think that the context has sort of changed because prior to the election, you had the junior doctors striking, knowing that really the Tories were going to be on their way out very soon. And actually, they have the upper hand. I think Labour have got a big majority. We know that they're going to be in place for the next 5 years. Sure, the junior doctors can make their lives miserable if they want to, but actually that's not going to mean that they get what they want either. So I think there's much more of an incentive for both sides to negotiate, whereas prior to this election, the junior doctors sort of held all the cards. So I think the incentive structure have really changed just as a result of the sheer size of the Labour majority.
Jack, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. Jack Rowlett there, political commentator with Young Voices UK. It is